From the rolling plains to the chilly Arctic, our world is full of lovely ecosystems just waiting to be discovered. Hey there, it's Theo from Geeky Gamer Guy. This video I'll be previewing Keystone North America from Gauntlet Entertainment. Note! Just like most of my previews, this video shows prototype components and is subject to change. Let's get exploring! Keystone North America is a card placement game for 1 to 4 players. Players are biologists observing and building the best wildlife biomes. Ow! To set up, give each player a player board and score sheet to be used at the end of the game. If playing with 2 players, remove species cards showing 3+ and return them to the box. Then shuffle the remaining and place 6 face up in a row near the deck. Shuffle the skills and place 5 on the table with their active side face up. Sort the wild cards by habitat and form 4 face-up stacks within reach of all players. Place the synergy and research tokens in piles. Place the time marker on the 0 space of the time track. Choose a first player and give them the first player token and a number of synergy tokens according to this chart. Lastly, give each player 2 secret objective cards. Choose one and return the other to the box. Now we're ready to get started. A game of Keystone North America is played over several rounds until a player triggers the end. Starting with the first player and continuing clockwise, each player takes a turn. On a player's turn, they can perform one of 2 actions: introduce or use skill. When taking the introduce action, a player will gain new species cards to introduce to their player board. Species cards show a number in the middle of the card used for constructing ecosystems, 1 to 4 habitat symbols along the left side of the card, a season symbol on the lower right used for secret objectives, and potentially a keystone symbol which increases the endgame scoring. You know it's important because it's part of the name, silly! A player's board has room for 16 species cards. To take a species card from the row, the active player pays synergy tokens for it. The far right species card is always free to take. If the player wants a card further down the row, they must pay for it by placing 1 synergy token on each card to the right of it. If there are any synergy tokens on it from previous turns, the player gains them in addition to the species card. Bonus! For example, to take the coyote species card, the player has to place synergy tokens on each of the first 3 cards starting at the right. They take the card, then place it on their player board. Anytime a player places a card adjacent to matching habitat symbols, they gain a synergy token. So going back to the previous example, the player places the coyote adjacent to 2 cards that share the symbols on it. The player takes 2 synergy tokens for matching 2 symbols shown on the American red squirrel, and 1 token for matching it with a polar bear. When placing species cards, it's beneficial to place them in consecutive, ascending, or descending order. Any row or column of 2 or more consecutive cards that have matching habitats would form an ecosystem that may score points in the end. Players can still place cards however they like to get matching habitat symbols for synergy tokens, and can potentially use skills to swap positions later. Which leads me to the second available action a player can take: use skill. When taking this action, the current player has 2 options: use 1 active skill or resolve all exhausted skills. If using an active skill, the player chooses one, resolves it, and then flips it over to its exhausted side. Active skills can give things like gaining more species cards from the deck to swapping positions of cards already placed on their player boards, gaining synergy tokens if they match adjacent habitats. Active skills also have the player discard a number of cards up to the number shown from the card row, discarding any synergy tokens on them as well. Bye bye! The player can also choose to resolve all face-down exhausted skills in any order that they like, flipping each one after being used back to their active side. Exhausted skills give similar effects as their active sides, like gaining additional synergy tokens and placing a research token on specific species cards. After all exhausted skills are flipped face up to their active side, the player also advances the time marker 1 space. I should also note that at any time on a player's turn, they can pay 10 synergy tokens to place a wild card with a specific habitat shown onto their boards. Wild cards take the place of any number for both the row and column it's in. At the end of the turn, slide all cards to the right and refill the row back up to 6 cards. Turns go round and round until one of 2 things happens. Either the time marker is advanced on the time track to where it shows the number of players, or a player fills up their board with cards. This triggers the final round of the game, and any player that hasn't taken a turn yet takes 1 final turn. Then play moves on to endgame scoring. Players score their most valuable ecosystem per row and column on their player boards. Each consecutive ascending or descending set of cards with matching habitats in the chosen ecosystem are worth 1 point each. Also gain an additional point for every research token on a species card in that ecosystem. For every species card in that ecosystem that shows a keystone symbol, score the entire ecosystem again, including any research tokens. So for example, this row has an ecosystem of 3 cards because the coyote, American bison, and red wolf are in consecutive order, and all share the same habitat. So that would score 3 points. There's also a research token on the American bison, so that scores an additional point, bringing it up to a total of 4 points for the ecosystem. Each card also shows a keystone symbol, so the entire ecosystem gets scored an additional 3 times, making the ecosystem worth 16 points in the end. Whoa. Lastly, score secret objectives based on how many of the depicted pattern of season symbols shown are on the player boards. Secret objective patterns can be rotated but not flipped, and each card can only be used once. Lastly, score 1 point for every 3 synergy tokens. The player with the most points wins. Some features here are a colorful, vibrant puzzle that gives tons of decisions to ponder over, all while being immersed in the different biomes of North America. The animal cards are not only beautiful to look at, but scientifically accurate, with numbers correlating to their positions on the food chain. Rawr. This preview showcases a competitive game, but in the box there is also a field journal for both solo and co-op adventures too. Each scenario presents an increasingly tougher challenge that also unlocks additional species cards that can be used in future games. I want to unlock them all! This game is definitely for players that want a tricky puzzle that only gets better the more you play it. With multiple modes of play, Keystone North America will provide hours of fun, whether it be wanting to work together or duking it out. Hoo-ha! So if any of this jives with you, you should definitely check this one out. I put a link to the Kickstarter in the comments below for you to check out further. That's it! Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to help out the channel, tapping the like button really helps. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell to not miss out on future videos. Until next time, stay geeky. Keep gaming. Ow! 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 If the player wants a card further down the row, they must pay for it by placing two synergy. Girl, you know how to play the game.